I think that's going. Okay, so thanks again, everyone, for coming this week. Again, we'll start with our collector spotlight. I don't really have any feedback from last week. If you have any questions, let me know, and then we'll get going. Last week, we learned about Alan C. Crundwell. So he was a bryologist from England who worked a lot in Scotland and the British Isles, but also quite a bit in Scandinavia. And I mentioned that one of his main collaborators was the Swedish bryologist Elsa Nyholm, is apparently how you pronounce that. And they worked together a lot, collecting all over. We have a lot of specimens with them together, so I thought it would be great to talk a little bit about her today. So this is just one of our specimens we have from that pair, collected in 1975 in this region, which I think we may have seen before on some of our labels. I know we have a lot of Scandinavia stuff here at Tennessee, and I believe the pronunciation is Jämtland, which is a county in central Sweden. So here, kind of on the west edge, bordering Norway, and also happens to have a very cool, at least historically, coat of arms with this really beautiful white moose kind of being harassed on either side by a dog and some sort of bird, which I found out, interestingly, some people say kind of symbolizes the region being fought over back and forth between Sweden and Norway, which apparently has happened. It's changed hands a number of times throughout its history. So kind of an interesting side note. So the specimen itself is here on the left. It's Brachythecium reflexum. And again, I included a nice picture of it living. So pretty little feathery, soft looking moss. And yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about Elsa Nyholm. So she was a Swedish bryologist. She was born Elsa Cecilia Tuvesson on a farm in 1911 in kind of the southern tip of Sweden, so down here. She grew up with a real interest in nature, but because she was a girl, she was not encouraged to study biology. She actually was not allowed to go even to grammar school, which I think in this context is middle school. So after elementary, she basically cared for her grandmother for a period of time. She went to handicraft school and household school. But it seems like she still continued to develop her interest in nature on the side, and was encouraged by two acquaintances. So one was a vicar, Olaf Haslau, and another was a chemist, John Persson. Her earliest moss specimens in the Bryophyte portal actually date to 1929, so when she was 18 years old, and we have quite a few from 1930. So this is one record. There's not a picture, but it's collected in 1930 by Elsa and that Olaf Haslau. You can see kind of nearby her hometown. So obviously she was out there learning about plants, collecting, even though she was not able to go to school for botany. In 1932, she applied for a job as a technical assistant at the Botanical Museum in Lund University, which is also down in the south of Sweden down here. And she got the job, and she eventually became a museum assistant. She was in charge of the plant exchange program for the museum. So she coordinated loans, identified specimens, and corresponded with other institutions around the world. Also studied several plant groups. So one of them is Carex, which you might be familiar with, is a genus of sedges with over 2,000 species. It's one of those notorious groups that's really tricky to kind of identify. There's a really cool, here's one of her Carex specimens you can see collected by her in 1946. But she really ended up focusing and specializing in mosses. So here are a couple moss specimens in the Bryophyte portal from quite early in her time at Lund. So you can see 1933, 1934, and this is under her maiden name. Her name does change to Nyholm like around 1937. So she probably got married, but I really honestly was not able to find any details about her husband or anything like that. So not much there, but like in a lot of these stories, mosses were not as well studied in her region compared to vascular plants. And she recognized that there was kind of a big gap. There was not a foundational comprehensive text of the moss flora for Northern Europe. And so she wanted to set out to create that and to write it, but that requires funding. And the Lund University was either not interested or not able to fund her. So she spent her own time and put together a sample treatment, example of what she wanted to do. She applied in 1954 to the Swedish National Science Research Council and was successful. So they actually funded her research for the next 10 years. And she spent that time diligently compiling the moss flora, illustrated moss flora of Fennoscandia in 6 volumes, which you can see here. So pretty massive undertaking to produce this really amazing guide. So she collected a lot in Scandinavia, obviously creating this flora. But the Bryophyte portal also has a number of specimens from abroad, further abroad. So she collected in Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Spain, Switzerland, Turkey, the UK, and Canada. This is just a little map showing specimens that have coordinates in the Bryophyte portal map, so not all of them. And there were some in Canada, but I cropped them out to get the picture a little bit better. Sorry, Mina. But again, kind of shows where else she was working. And if you look at the numbers, the highest number of specimens she collected was from Sweden and also from Turkey. So that's kind of interesting, but she did a lot of work down there as well. So she actually corresponded with Alan C. Crundwell for quite a while before they met in person in 1957 at a conference in England. And the following year, he traveled to Sweden to visit her. And the two formed a long-lasting collaboration and friendship and collected all over across Scandinavia and also a lot in Turkey together. The pair described and revised a number of taxa together, so you'll see their name on some of these scientific taxa. In 1964, she got the position and held till her retirement of the head curator of the Moss Herbarium at the Swedish Museum of Natural History in Stockholm, where she was caring for over 700,000 Bryophyte specimens, managing all the herbarium assistants, and also conducting her own research. She did a lot of taxonomic work. There are, I think, 87 names associated with her name in Tropicos. And she also helped to found the Nordic Bryological Society in 1966 and served on their very first board. And in 1969, she was awarded an honorary doctorate from Lund University, which is pretty amazing for someone who wasn't allowed to really to go to grammar school, wasn't allowed to really go past elementary school, which is pretty amazing. So after her official retirement, she continued to work. So in the 1980s and 90s, so when she was in her 70s and 80s, she compiled another illustrated flora of Nordic mosses in 4 volumes, which are, you can see here. And that combined with her first flora comprises over 1,200 pages that she wrote and illustrated in English, which is also impressive considering her only formal training in English was 1 year in elementary school. And she basically taught herself through, they're called Teach Yourself Linguaphone courses in her spare time to speak English and to write in English. So she returned to Lund in her later life and had a little working space at the Botanical Museum there, so kind of back where she started. And she passed away in 2002 after a long illness. The Bryophyte genus Nyholmiella is named in her honor, and also a new species of mosses that was found in Turkey, where she did a lot of work, was also named after her in 2013. So specimen-wise, we actually have a lot. So there's a lot. There's over 13,000 specimens from Nyholm in the Bryophyte portal, which is amazing. I looked, and I think she's like the second. It's the second highest number we have, at least of the profiles I've been going through with you guys. I think the most was Faye A. McFadden. We had 16,000 in the portal, but 13,000 is pretty close. That's a lot. There's a few in the lichen portal as well as a vascular portal, but obviously overwhelmingly mosses and liverworts. Bionomia, which is a really cool online database of natural history collectors with profiles and things like that, has for Nyholm has 15,000 specimens collected in at least 18 countries and over 400 identified by her in at least 24 countries. You can see, obviously, worked on material from around the globe. And yeah, I'll just end with a quote from her obituary. So it said, Elsa was basically enthusiastic and positive regarding life in general and very devoted to what she wanted to do. These characteristics and a certain amount of stubbornness explain why she managed to get both into the scientific world and to write her extensive floras. So yeah, I think really, really impressive career, even without considering kind of the challenges she had to overcome in her path to education. And she must have been really determined to kind of make a career working in science. And she was really successful. So anyway, she left a big legacy for future biologists with her work. And yeah, that's Elsa Nyholm. So thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing. It's nice to know